La URSS era un projecte polític, no? És la Unió de Repúbliques Socialistes Soviètiques i com a tal és un projecte polític de federació de repúbliques que en el seu cas agafen la forma de soviets i com que el projecte polític, en aquest cas estava basat en el comunisme i el socialisme, passa per davant de tot, es fa una espècie de tel que aglutina a totes les repúbliques, a tothom que hi viu a dins, perquè la primera identitat passa a ser som comunistes, especialment quan comença la Guerra Freda i sempre les identitats es reforcen quan tens un contrari al davant, un antagonista, i per tant en el moment que s'inicia la Guerra Freda, la URSS, la goma que enganxa a tota la gent que viu dins de la URSS és aquest comunisme-socialisme i creuen, o com a mínim viure sota aquests principis, com a contrapart als principis del capitalisme i el liberalisme dels Estats Units i del bloc d'Occident. Això feia que els problemes no existissin? No, però com a mínim no es veien tant o no eren els que passaven al davant perquè tothom era soviètic, en primer lloc, comunista i després les seves identitats. La gent jo crec que molt sovint no recorda, no que no recordi, però no té en ment que a nivell geogràfic era un terreny brutalment gran. Avui en dia el que és només hi ha Rússia continua sent l'estat més gran del món. Doncs ens hem d'imaginar el que avui en dia és Rússia més 14 estats més. Tot allò o ho gestiones amb molta mà de ferro o és molt difícil controlar. I què va passar? Que hi havia zones on aquestes identitats es van mantenir més, perquè estaven més aïllades de Moscou, perquè no arribaven massa les infraestructures, perquè no es van desenvolupar les vies de tren o el que fos. En aquestes zones molt més allunyades, la població era com si estem sota aquest règim, però continuem tenint el nostre dialecte o els nostres costums o la nostra religió. Clar, en el moment que la URSS es dissol i el nou mapa i les noves divisions queden d'una manera o d'una altra, sorgeix aleshores amb força aquest xoc d'identitats.
Well, in many ways, the history and the historical problem of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict has come to define where we are today. What's most important, however, are two specific factors. First is the Karabakh conflict erupted during the Soviet period, and it tended to shape both development and democracy of Armenia and Azerbaijan. Well, in many ways, Prime Minister Pashinyan of Armenia is very much a trophy for President Putin of Russia. In other words, there is little room to maneuver for Armenia. It was Russia that imposed the ceasefire, ending the war. It is Russia that is responsible for the security and safety of the Armenians that remain in Nagorno-Karabakh. So from an Armenian perspective, there are specific limits to how much and how far Armenia can go with the West. In many ways, there was a degree of corruption in previous governments that undermined military preparation. But at the same time, the intensity of the surprise attack by Azerbaijan was also especially serious because of unprecedented direct military support for Azerbaijan from NATO member Turkey. This made the conflict and war especially decisive.
I think like we were kind of strong, and because everyone knows that our enemies, Azerbaijan has like neighbor countries which help them a lot. There were a lot of people from another countries that came there and helped them to fight. But and when you compare like the number of the participants of the war, you just you just understand that we were a few and like gave equal like fight to them.
When I was in Russia, I finished the university there. I had a lot of friends from Azerbaijan, and there was no politics in Russia between us. We were not enemies, we were friends. I should answer like this. We lost men, and they too. War is a very bad thing, and maybe that's it. Nothing else.
Most tragically, the unexpected, unprecedented war for Nagorno-Karabakh of 2020 led to a painful casualty toll. In other words, every Armenian family was touched in some way, given the small size of the country and the fact that conscription is the norm in military service, making this much more emotional than political.
They also lost men. They are fighting against us. We are their enemies, and we think that they are our enemies. And we are killing each other for lands, for resources.
Basically, I have imagined like everything in my life except that. And when for example, when I completed my military service, and then I was amazed of me that how I survived that 44 days, because in that time you just you just didn't live, you just survived by an hour. You think that like it is just the last hour or last minute of your life, and you just I cannot I hope that no one will feel that, because it's just such a the worst feeling. Yeah, it was hard.
I was not Edward. I was not a citizen of Armenia. I was just a job. I was my job. I was the commander of my soldiers, and I just needed to protect them, protect my land, and do my job. I lost lots of soldiers and lots of good friends, and the worst part of it is when you are holding these people, when you're holding their hands and you just can do nothing. And you know that the person is going to die soon, and you just stand there and watch, just holding their hand. We saw when our Azerbaijani infantry, a machine gunner was shooting at us. I took the RPG, the rocket launcher, and I wanted to take out the machine gunner, and they saw me first. I wanted to shoot, and I just fell down because I couldn't feel my arm. Then a couple of seconds later, when I was looking for my arm because I thought that it just blew it up, my soldiers told me that it's on my back. Then when I got shot, I shouted that there is a sniper working on us. So we should be careful. And a couple of seconds, maybe 30 or 40 seconds later, the sniper shot my commander. His name was Arthur, and he died instantly. Another minute later, they shot another officer, and during that day, if I'm not mistaken, we had 8 deaths, and I was the only one to survive the sniper. And by the way, my father was participating in this second war, and he came there to help me, and he basically saved my life.
I think after the war, I really understood that every moment of your life is appreciated, and you should appreciate every moment of your life. It doesn't matter where you are. You should always remind yourself that you are surrounded by your lovely people, and there is no time, to go and say or like just like your favorite or your family members, your friends, because in that time you realize that you will not have any time to do that. As for me, for example, my family members, I imagined their situation during the war, and really I think that their situation was worse than mine, because because I was in that kind of situation every second, and I didn't realize how time flew. But they just were waiting for my call for days, for just a call to listen to my voice and be relaxed for just a moment, and then their anxiety will be started again. So I think their situation were worse than mine.
Per mi, per mi i per molta gent que estudia conflictes, els altos al foc que estan imposats tenen data de caducitat. Imposat encara que oficialment el primer ministre armeni el signés i l'aprovés. Va ser la forma d'avançar va ser, no sé si direm encara genocidi, perquè al final això va per números, però va ser una neteja cultural impressionant, fins i tot destruint símbols religiosos i empantant a la població a marxar. O sigui, no és només que es declarés la sobirania sobre el territori, que de facto ja gairebé existia, sinó és que empento la gent fora i per tant estàs provocant una neteja d'aquell territori. Si tu això després ho negocies i el primer ministre del territori afectat o de la unitat política afectada, en aquest cas el d'Armènia, el president, ho signa sense que la societat tingui la sensació que hi ha hagut cap negociació, cap acord de pau, cap res, sinó perquè obligat, perquè no hi hagi més morts, és un paper mullat. És un paper mullat fins que tinguin o bé força per poder intentar recuperar el territori o en algun moment hi hagi qualsevol espurna que ho faci esclatar. I potser de vegades dura 30 anys, perquè l'altre actor és molt dèbil i no pot fer aquesta revenja, però no és el que nosaltres li diríem construcció de pau, és un acord d'alto al foc, no és un acord de pau, que és diferent.
Azerbaijan has done much to demonstrate the impossibility of Armenians remaining safe and secure within Azerbaijan. And the most devastating lesson from the war was the dangerous precedent where Azerbaijan, with support from Turkey, has established a new precedent very dangerous for the West. That is demonstrating that there is a military solution to essentially a diplomatic conflict. And I think this is why Nagorno-Karabakh is also a challenge to European values and the Western interests in the region. Russian peacekeepers are more professional than any other example of so-called Russian peacekeepers. The real challenge, however, is there is no example of Russian peacekeepers ever going home. In other words, once they deploy, they usually stay to consolidate Russian power and influence. Because one of the most revealing lessons of the war for Nagorno-Karabakh was the emptiness, the bankruptcy of relying on Russia's security guarantee. In other words, Russia in many ways is a more deadly challenge for Armenia because Russia has become an unreliable friend. Rather than a more predictable rival or enemy like Azerbaijan, Russia presents a new challenge for Armenia, given the lack of commitment and the arrogance with which Russia takes Armenia for granted.
Well, now we are like a very much wounded person who are in emergency department. But now we are step by step moving from emergency department to intensive care department. Our wounds are very deep, but we are alive. This means that we have chance to recover. And it depends on exclusively on our moral and physical capabilities.
During this 25 or 26 years, there were always like losses in the border, and more than 2,000 soldiers died in the army. So Armenia was kind of used to living in always burying young boys as a result of the border clashes. But I think the majority of the dead soldiers were only from 18 to 20 years. So like only in the sense of the mental health, it really affected people, society, and the young generation to be forced to bury this many young people. And also it quite affected, and it will still affect quite a lot Armenia's demographics, because it was, the results will be seen in following years, like 5 or 6, when they were expected to have children and they will not. So we'll see, I think, a decrease in the population too.
The only diplomatic entity empowered to mediate the conflict, the OSCE so-called Minsk Group, has done as much as it could short of political will. In other words, it was the absence of political will that actually hindered the mediation effort. It's rather analytically lazy and convenient to blame everything on the mediators rather than the parties to the conflict themselves. I think the fundamental problem, though, was the lack of having all parties to the conflict at the negotiating table. This was a conflict about Nagorno-Karabakh. Therefore, it is rather impractical to exclude the democratically elected representatives of Nagorno-Karabakh from the peace process.
La comunitat internacional, és trist que ho digui una professora de política internacional, però és la gran paradoxa, no? Que sense algo similar al que li diem comunitat internacional, jo crec honestament que el món seria pitjor, però amb el que tenim no arriba a ser massa bo tampoc, no és suficient, i a molts ens agradaria que actués molt més ràpid. Jo crec que va haver una cosa de momentum, segurament, va enganxar en un moment que el món estava amb altres necessitats i urgències i segurament tothom va mirar cap a altres costats. Però en general, quan són llocs tan petits i entre estats que cap dels dos sembla que interessi molt als grans, si no hi ha una cosa molt concreta geopolítica, un interès molt específic, no s'acostuma a reaccionar. En aquest cas en concret podria haver passat si no hagués estat en el moment en què va passar, perquè el fet que Rússia tingués interès, però que a Europa li interessa molt més que la South Pipeline o els gasoductes i els oleoductes que poden passar per allà passin per allà que no pas per Rússia, Jo esperava que la Unió Europea reaccionés molt més, honestament. I jo crec que va ser un resultat del moment que vivíem, que era un moment de gran desconcert en general en el món i de coses molt serioses i molt importants, i va fer que no paréssim prou atenció, segurament. El paper de l'OSCE no m'estranya perquè el que us deia, inclou a Rússia i als Estats Units, però dius, ostres, podria ser precisament un actor que hagués proporcionat mediació, un espai de diàleg, negociació, però si no interessava els dos grans que estan allà dins, és el de sempre. Jo a classe sempre dic, no posis la culpa a la Unió Europea, no posis la culpa a les Nacions Unides, no posis la culpa a l'OSCE, posa la culpa als estats que la formen. L'OSCE no pren decisions per si mateixa, les pren a l'ambaixador dels Estats Units a OSCE, a l'ambaixador de Rússia a l'OSCE, l'ambaixador de... I passa el mateix amb la Unió Europea o les Nacions Unides. És un instrument, però si els estats que estan a dins no estan prou conscienciats i prou realment actius com per voler que l'instrument sigui útil, l'instrument en si mateix no deixa de ser.
Well, international support is again a very delicate thing, because we are not a recognized state, as you know, which actually somehow hinders, or to a great extent, engagement of international community and international organizations in our development and rehabilitation, which we think is not a just and correct way, because we are deprived from humanitarian assistance. Of course, we have Armenian diaspora, and it is helping Artsakh. We also receive, let's say, assistance from different countries. For example, Russia, which is carrying out humanitarian mission here, peacekeeping. It's also a direct assistance to our security, because it provides security. They have been also engaged in humanitarian activities, in reconstruction of different infrastructures, etc. International Committee of the Red Cross for many years has been working in Artsakh. Medicines Sans Frontières, another organization, Hallow Trust, United States also provides some assistance for humanitarian needs. But these are just a very few such states and organizations which are directly on a state level engaged in this kind of assistance. But we need also some more active involvement of international community, especially in humanitarian field.
Jo definiria què va fer la comunitat armènia a Catalunya i a Espanya. Primer, com a resum, ajuda humanitària, fer activitats per informar el màxim possible, també dintre d'aquestes activitats entren les manifestacions, i també demanar un suport polític a les diferents formacions polítiques i administracions, com a ciutadans armeni-catalans i armeni-espanyols que visquem aquí, perquè tant el govern d'Espanya com el Parlament de Catalunya també estiguessin a favor de la pau, però alhora també del dret dels ciutadans d'Artsakh.
Dir que Catalunya és un dels primers països del sud d'Europa en reconèixer el genocidi armeni, però que segueixen sent perseguits. I quan ens vam reunir, per exemple, amb el defensor de drets humans, ell no ho ha afirmat taxativament, però sí que hi havia alguns indicis o alguns informes que la guerra del Karabakh tenia unes connotacions de persecució ètnica o religiosa, ètnica i religiosa també en els dos sentits, i que per tant hi havia un cert sentiment, que això sí que ho vam notar i ho vam percebre d'algunes de les entrevistes que vam fer, d'un cert sentiment de que se seguia perseguint i que hi havia un nou genocidi o un nou intent de genocidi del poble armeni. Havien cremat esglésies, els insulten com a gossos armenis, que és un dels insults que va proferir el president d'Azerbaidjan i que després els soldats repeteixen, els tallen les orelles, que és una de les ofenses que en aquelles zones és una de les ofenses més grans que pots fer a un armeni. I bé, hi ha tot un seguit de característiques que podrien considerar-se un principi d'intent de genocidi, no ho sé perquè són paraules molt grans, però sí que de persecució ètnica i religiosa.
Well, I do think normalization between Armenia and Turkey is important for what it's not. In other words, it is not reconciliation or rapprochement. It's normalization. It's the basic minimum of neighbors, diplomatic relations, and a reopening of the border. We have to seek a new deterrence to prevent a renewal of hostilities. And as much as we depend on Russian peacekeepers, I think we need to invest much more in Armenia's accountability, democratic institutions, as the real key to national security. And in this context, Armenia's future is much brighter than its neighbors. Armenia's future is also much brighter than the region as a whole. The long-term outlook for stability in Armenia is ensured. It's positive and guaranteed. Unlike all of our neighbors, from Turkey to Azerbaijan, even Georgia and Iran, Armenia has much greater institutional democracy and much greater stability. This is why my optimism is much more justified.
After the war, again, some shoots on the borders, soldiers are getting died, and I hope, of course, I really hope that soon in the future, I hope very soon, it will be solution, and there will not be any this kind of thing or situation in Armenia, and the soldiers will not have to give their life, because it's undescriptive.
Peace doesn't exist somewhere. You just cannot open your fridge or, I don't know, or go to your office and find peace there. No, it doesn't exist. If we want peace, both of our nations want peace, then there should be peace. I hope so.